one of the few European countries willing to speak out on Gaza. Slovenia denounces Israel's genocide and calls for accountability.
When you see the blatant violations of international law, and inside of this international law, humanitarian law is violated on a daily basis. I mean, how can you be quiet about this? And I was the first president of European Union to say that there is genocide going on in Gaza and we are just watching it and we are quiet.
Slovenia's President Nataša Pirc Musar tells us why she won't stay silent while European leaders look the other way. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Rida Fakhri. Today we turn our focus to a small Central European nation that is making a big mark in global diplomacy. As a current non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, Slovenia is using its seat to influence international decisions on peace and security. Within the European Union, it is also using its voice to challenge the status quo, punching far above its weight to condemn Israel's genocide in Gaza, while other larger nations remain silent. Behind this increasingly bold and principled foreign policy is President Nataša Pirc Musar, who has delivered some of the strongest criticisms of the international system. In her address to the United Nations General Assembly in September, she issued a blistering warning about the world's failure to stop the slaughter of Palestinians, drawing historical parallels to other genocides.
For the sake of future generations, to fulfill our responsibility as human beings, to ensure that we are on the right side of the history, we should do the right thing. We did not stop the Holocaust. We did not stop the genocide in Rwanda. We did not stop the genocide in Srebrenica. We must stop the genocide in Gaza. There are no excuses anymore. None.
But can a small country like Slovenia push for meaningful change when major powers refuse to act? We sat down with President Pirc Musar in Ljubljana to ask about her country's willingness to speak up in defense of international law and human rights. Madam President, you are one of the very few EU leaders who have spoken forcefully and bluntly about the situation in Gaza at a time when other European leaders have refused to use strong language or take any decisive action. What compelled you to take such a clear, principled public stance? Why does it matter to Slovenia what happens in Gaza?
First of all, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you. It's a great honor. But to answer your question, that's me. I've been like that for the whole of my life. I want to be honest, firstly to myself, and now being a president, I have to be honest to the people that I do represent internally and in global arena. And I think that if the politicians are not sincere, if they are not vocal about the things that matter, what should I say? This is not the politics that I would like to represent. And being vocal about Gaza and Palestine, it was not difficult for me, believe me, because I truly feel the suffering of the people. And being a lawyer, of course, when I see the neglection and violations of international law, it hurts my soul a lot. But just to explain why Slovenia is so sensitive about Palestine, there is one very good and deep reason for that. When the war in Bosnia and Herzegovina was going on, we were watching the genocide in Srebrenica. I was there at the 30th anniversary just recently, and still to see the pain of the people there. And Slovenia during that war accepted around 70,000 refugees from Bosnia and Herzegovina. So the sensitivity of Slovenian people is there because what was going on in the vicinity of my country.
And the public supports you in this?
Definitely. I mean, you know, again, like in every single country, you have left and right, and conservative right-wing parties are more pro-Israeli than the left-wing parties. This is what I have to take into account. But whenever they do ask me, why are you on a side of Palestine? I said, I mean, I can give you one answer, and this is the wrong question. I'm not on the side of Palestine, nor on the side of Israel. I want to be on the side of humanity. This is what I do believe in, because, you know, I often say this number, and I will repeat it again. There are 206 countries on this planet, 193 in United Nations. That means that we do have 206 prime ministers, 206 presidents and some queens and kings among us. That's 412 people who do have the responsibility for 8 billion people of this planet. Are we aware of that obligation? Do we have a sense how heavy the rucksack is we have on our shoulders? Not a lot of politicians do have that feeling of responsibility. I'm not happy to say this.
And you have 27 European governments.
Oh, yes.
You must feel isolated within the EU. Has the muted response of almost every other European government except for Spain surprised you?
An island. And now more countries are, sorry to use this sentence, waking up. You know, France recognized Palestine, Malta recognized Palestine, also Canada, Australia. So, you know,
are you surprised that they've been so muted on such an important issue? What does it tell us?
Maybe not surprised. The better word would be, I was sad.
Disappointed.
Disappointed, yes. Because when you see the blatant violations of international law, and inside of this international law, humanitarian law is violated on a daily basis. I mean, how can you be quiet about this? You know, and the shocking point for my fellow presidents and prime ministers was when I had a speech in Brussels in front of the European members of parliament. And I was the first president of European Union to say that there is genocide going on in Gaza and we are just watching it and we are quiet. You know, but after that, maybe that was a turning point that somebody had to say it. I'm glad it was me because I do believe in what I say. That now more and more people do say the word genocide. And, you know, the experts are saying all the attributes for the genocide definition are there.
But so are European leaders willing to say it publicly, or do they say it to you privately?
Privately, of course, we do have a different conversation. I mean, I'm not privileged, you know, to discuss what it's say tete-a-tete on just between us. But a lot of them are aware of what's going on. But the position of some countries towards Israel is a very difficult position. And I'm sorry to see that European Union is not unified in this. The way as we are 95% unified when we discuss, you know, the war in Ukraine. But Israel and Palestine is, in a way, not such a different story. But we do have, and I say this publicly very often, we have double standards. And it's not fair.
But is it because of political calculation, strategic calculation, or the fear of economic and diplomatic repercussions? What is holding them back from doing what they've done so quickly and so efficiently on Ukraine?
Probably both. You know, the economic ties with Israel are there, and when Israel is not happy with something, the repercussions are there. They are, you know, quite, when they become angry, they become really angry. But Slovenia took that into account. Maybe it was easier for us because we do not have such strong economic ties with Israel, but nevertheless, we had them in the past. We had good relationship with Russia as well before the war, with Ukraine. But just what comes into my mind, if we just look at Germany and Austria, you know, I do have a feeling that there is a lot of collective guilt behind because of the Holocaust. And I try to understand this as well. But if we want to stop the atrocities, the genocide in Palestine, I will say this word again, we would have to be more unified. And the double standards I'm discussing is, you know, when we are discussing economic sanctions towards Russia, it looks easier. But when we discuss economic sanctions towards Israel, it's a very difficult political topic, very difficult.
Is the inaction due to internal divisions, or is it due to pressures from the United States and others?
You know, are asking me $1 billion question. It's not easy to answer, but yes, United States of America, of course, are a very strong player in Europe. because of the NATO alliance. We are friends, we are allies. But you know what I say to my fellow presidents? If we are friends and allies, does that mean that we don't have the opportunity and the right to say if something is wrong? A true friend is always a friend who understands critics as well. In Slovenia, it has a good relationship with the United States of America. I do know that the Trump administration is not like really very happy because our position for Palestine and towards Israel. But the responsibility Slovenia has at the moment, it's not only bilaterally, it's the multilateralism that we do believe in, and being a non-permanent member of the Security Council. It means that we have to represent the countries who supported us to become a non-permanent member. And those were 153 countries voted for us. And I said to them, we are not going to be a proxy of the United States of America. We are not going to be a proxy of European Union. We are going to work for the multilateralism and international law for the benefit of all the members of the UN. It's not always, in the benefit of all the members, but still, if we are going to neglect the international law, we are running into chaos already. International law is the holy shrine we have to nurture. And above that, the international courts. To put the judges of the International Criminal Court on a sanction list, I mean, how low can we go? And when this court was judging about the cases from Africa, we were praising the court up to the sky. Yeah, we need the court. The court is the final frontier to put the mirror in front of us. But now, when this court will have to decide about Israel, then we don't need this court anymore. I mean, how come? Internally and internationally, the court is the last credible body who can tell us what's right and what's wrong, even if we do not agree. But the court has all the knowledge, they do know the law, and we have to respect their decisions.
Has the court been bullied, in your opinion?
Definitely.
Judges have been sanctioned.
Definitely. Definitely. I mean,
how do you
one of the
change this reality?
lawyers is a judge at the International Criminal Court. When I talked to her after the sanctions, you cannot imagine how many problems this judge has, and the rest, of course, as well. It's not easy for them, and this is why I'm trying to be vocal also about the International Criminal Court and all the international courts, because this is really very important for multilateralism and for the global rule of law.
And what would you do to reinforce the role, the authority and the mandate of the ICC, because it has issued an arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu? Yeah. Would Slovenia be willing to enforce Putin. It on its territory?
Definitely.
If Netanyahu was to visit, he'd be arrested.
Prime Minister Netanyahu is persona non grata in Slovenia. He's on a Slovenian list. If President Putin or Prime Minister Netanyahu would come to Slovenia, we would enforce the arrest warrant.
They'd be arrested.
Yes.
Slovenia is the first European country to have implemented a full weapons trade embargo.
Yeah.
This happened in July of this year.
Yes.
What compelled you to do this, and what kind of consequences have you faced as a result?
The pain that European Union is not doing enough is really very present in Slovenian government, and the Prime Minister, we are totally in line with this, said that Slovenia is going to do something on its own, and he kept the promise. I do not have a feeling that Israel is, of course they are not pleased with the decision, that's for sure. I try to understand Israel, and I see that also people in Israel, intellectuals, are now louder and louder to tell Prime Minister Netanyahu that this is the wrong way. So this is why I was really happy to see that United States of America decided to at least in some way cooperate with Security Council and United Nations and try to adopt a resolution about, the first step to stop the atrocities in Palestine. So the United Nations are there especially for that kind of situation. So that's the first step.
Some, Madam President, including many human rights experts,
yes,
see this vote at the UN Security Council which Slovenia was in favor of, to adopt Trump's so-called peace plan as some kind of betrayal of the principles of international law. And they also allude to the fact that it allows the country that has provided the bombs to Israel during this genocide to be in charge of the peace. Does it make sense? Why did Slovenia vote in favor of it?
I definitely accept the criticism. And being a lawyer in many points, the international experts are right. But in a diplomatic world, the situation is much more different, you know. For me and for Slovenia, it was really important to finalize this first step. But this is only a small first step. I'm not pleased with the wording of the resolution, but it was adopted with 13 votes. China and Russia abstained. They didn't use the veto power. And it is the first time since 7th of October 2023 that the United States of America proposed something and they didn't use the veto power. In any previous resolutions, any member states proposed or members of the Security Council, there was always a veto from the United States of America. So this is why I see this step as very important. It's not perfect. Israelis are not satisfied. Palestinians are not satisfied. Basically, nobody is like 100% satisfied.
But doesn't it go against the principles of international law and the inherent right to self-determination and self-rule of every people, including the Palestinians?
There is one sentence in the resolution, and I'm happy it is there because the Israelis didn't want it, this sentence to be in the resolution. So I read it in a way that when the time comes, we will discuss the self-determination again, so that there is a window of possibility. If you ask me as a Slovenian president, I will always, always support the double-state solution, because I think this is the only way forward. Israel has the right to exist, but so does Palestine. It's going to be really hard. When we discuss a double-state solution, madam, we are discussing the borders from 1967. What happened after 1967? West Bank, 740,000 illegal settlers are there, and Israel is building 3,000 new flats every single year.
And the occupation continues.
Yes, despite the resolution of the Security Council, despite the many international calls, they are still continuing violating the international law.
But it isn't just, Madam President, Israel that is violating UN Security Council resolutions and ICJ rulings. Are European nations who still provide weapons and political cover to Israel complicit in this genocide?
To be honest, whenever I see the violation of the international law and the country is quiet, it is complicit. Because our obligation as a state is to shout and scream when we see the violation of the international law. To send weapons, let them deal with their ethics. Slovenia is not doing that. I will tell you what Slovenia is going to do. You probably listened to my speech at the General Assembly, and I made a proposal there, because a lot of problems we are facing today in this globally disrupted world is the veto powers, which are absolute veto powers in Security Council. We have to tackle this. The reform of UN Charter is necessary. We are going to ask the International Court of Justice for the advisory opinion, because this current UN Charter is allowing us to do that. The General Assembly can vote on that and ask the International Court of Justice for the advisory opinion on the topic. I cannot tell you the question yet because it's really very important how you formulate the question, but when, why the veto power can be used when we discuss mass atrocities, genocide, and crimes against humanity.
You'd need a two-thirds majority.
We need a two-thirds majority.
In the UN General Assembly.
We have to tackle this very important question.
But you know that the veto powers are never likely to relinquish their power.
But can they be limited on the grounds of the existent UN Charter? This is why I want to hear the distinguished international lawyers at the International Court of Justice to tell us, you know, when and why, and when it is appropriate and when it's not appropriate, and what the international law is saying about it. If we are only abusing the veto power. This is not the right way forward. Not for me, definitely not.
And of course, many leaders across the global south have long argued that the UN Security Council needs to be more representative, more inclusive, more democratic. As someone who is known to speak very bluntly, are you afraid, are you concerned that the UN Security Council has become a rubber stamp for the United States?
It sometimes looked that way. But you know what I will tell you? The permanent 5 countries do have much bigger responsibility than the rest of the Security Council members and the rest of the UN members. With the veto power, you have the obligation. And just to tell you about tiny little fact, permanent 5 countries are China, Russia, United States, France and United Kingdom. France and United Kingdom didn't use the veto power since 1986. So that's the responsibility we do have as Europeans. China is pragmatic, you know, sometimes they use it, sometimes they don't. And Russia and United States of America are now fighting with veto powers in Security Council.
But I think the United States beats Russia by far.
Oh yes,
on using
by
the veto.
numbers. For example, one more thing comes into my mind when we discuss Russia, you know. Russia proposed another resolution, and they abstained, they didn't vote, they didn't impose the veto for the US resolution. And the wording of the Russian resolution is, sorry to say, much better than the American wording. But you know what I would like to say to President Putin and the Foreign Minister Lavrov right now? Just copy-paste this wording to the Ukrainian situation. That's the double standards Russia is showing inside the Security Council.
Speaking of Russia and Ukraine, there are those who believe that NATO played a big role in provoking the situation we have today. As a NATO member, do you understand that perspective?
I understand what was going on in the past. There was a promise that NATO is not going to go further.
1 inch eastward.
Yeah, and then, the Baltic countries came in, Poland, Hungary, Slovenia among them. So that's like raising a red flag in front of Putin's eyes. I'm not apologizing him, no way. I know who the aggressor is, I know who violated the UN Charter, you know, and what he's doing in Ukraine is a crime.
But do you believe that NATO should keep pushing eastward? Is that a recipe for more or less security?
The situation is now much different, you know, and then just to answer this shortly, even inside NATO now, United States of America are showing and telling Europe that we have to be more defense independent. So we relied too much on United States in the past. Let's talk about the peace solutions with the enemy. We have to. And my biggest critique to European Union is also the following one. We stopped talking to President Putin. Do you think that was the right decision? And now President Trump is negotiating for peace in Ukraine. Do you think that President Trump is going to have European Union security in mind? Or there are other topics that he has in mind? And now we are begging President Trump, please, can we be present, we as European Union? This is not the right way to do it. We have to discuss peace and security in Europe directly with President Putin.
But do you believe that this is the position that the United States and its allies took because they saw this as a proxy war between Russia and the United States? Ukraine was always a pawn.
Yeah, you're right.
Madam President, let me ask you finally, from your vantage point, what do you see as the gravest security threat to world peace today? Is it Russia and Iran, as the US President and some of the other Western leaders often claim? What is the biggest threat as you see it?
Can I answer now as a mother, as a wife? The biggest threat I see is the lack of trust among politicians. A total lack of trust. We do not trust each other anymore. And then, you know, in the mentality of certain countries, if they think that they're threatened, they think that all the countries think the same way, and that, you know, there are always possibilities for misunderstandings, attacks. But the biggest threat is the total neglection of the international law. You know, the biggest enemy, do you know who's the biggest enemy? Climate change. That's the biggest enemy we have on this planet today. And we are forgetting about this. Can I end with the quote of Martin Luther King Jr.? This is a quote which is really close to my heart. He said, "Our lives will end the day when we become silent about the things that matter." That's the motto of my life.
President Nataša Pirc Musar, thank you so much for joining me.
You're
Thank
welcome.
As the Slovenian president just reminded us, influence isn't measured in size, GDP, or military power. It's measured in principle. In a world dominated by a handful of powerful nations, smaller states with clear values and moral leadership are proving that they too can punch above their weight. They can shift the debate, they can challenge the status quo, they can speak with the political courage and integrity the world needs. When a small nation of just 2 million people articulates a clearer vision and takes a stronger stance than governments with nuclear arsenals and endless resources, it exposes a new reality, that when big powers fall short, smaller countries are willing to take the lead. That's all from me, Rida Fakhri, and the entire team. Thanks for watching.